I travelled deep into the heart of this place today. I went back to try and fathom out what had actually happened. It's always eerie going back somewhere, on your own especially, and there's a slight apprehensiveness today for me. While travelling these paths, I didn't see a single soul. I was wondering whether I'd make it out of here. As I've said before, not everything that's happened to me that's paranormal has happened in the night time. Hi and welcome to Evidence Pending My Paranormal Life. I'm your host, Michael Lee Pennock. And today's story is another true story from my life. This one is only a few years old. About this time of year I was out with a young man who wanted to learn about the flora and fauna that lived in these woodlands. Maybe learn a bit of bushcraft and survival skills. While we were out here walking, we saw some deer tracks. We decided to follow them. There was one larger deer and one smaller deer. We could tell from the tracks. We followed them. As they left the main track and broke away into the deeper woodland, the path got more precarious along the way. There was mud and rocks everywhere, and a steep drop in some places, and mud up to your knees in others. But we persevered. We came to a hawthorn tree that had formed a kind of natural arch over one of the pathways we were following. It obscured the view of the path ahead of us. I went through first. As I passed under the tree branch with my head down, I looked up to see what I thought was a deer. I could see the brownish tone of what I thought was two deer. And then I noticed what I thought was a third. I stayed perfectly still. I didn't want to startle the animals. And at this moment, the young man passed under and said, "Look, what are they?" And this is where things started to get strange. You see, three heads popped up, and they weren't faces of deer. I was in complete shock, as was the young man. Oh, he just stood there, looking, for a few seconds, maybe at most. It seemed like an eternity. It was surreal. And then these things noticed us. One of them was holding a deer. It was obviously dead. And they just headed up and scaled a vertical wall of plants, trees, and loose rocks, like it was nothing. Me and the young man looked at each other in disbelief. And I said, "Come on, let's get out of here." And we started making our way hurriedly along the track, trying to head to one of the nearest villages. This place is a bit out of the way, really, and seldom travelled by people on foot. You'll be able to see from the pathways, they're not travelled often. After about another hour had passed, we tried to leave the woodland as quickly as possible. But as we walked along the path, we could hear noises. They sounded like owls, but they weren't quite owl screeches or hoots. And I'm sure these things were watching us from above. The air became still and the bird chatter ceased. An unnatural silence fell across the forest. Me and the young man were wondering whether we were going to make it out of here. It gets dark down in these woodlands. And as night fell, we were beginning to think we'd never get out. We could still hear the hooting and screeching of these owl-type noises. Eventually we decided to wade through one of the rivers here. And we got very wet. Eventually made it out, and the young man went home. Sometime later we went for a walk in the very same place again. This time we decided to climb up where we'd see the three beings take the deer. After about an hour using rope to climb our way up, which isn't a very, very high height, but it's a very challenging climb, we made it to the top. And we were in a small clearing at the edge of a farm field, and it was obvious to me there was some sort of walking track following the edge of the farmer's field. So I said, come on, let's take that track. And as we did so, I noticed a dead sheep. And as I looked at it, I noticed some rather unusual wounds. It was completely drained of blood, and the wounds it had seemed to be cauterized. I've seen dead animals many times in my life, and I know what natural, normal decomposition of an animal looks like, but this was unnatural. Then I noticed another, and then another. I thought about going to the farmer and notifying him, but then I thought I better not. On seeing the state of these sheep, again we decided to make our way out of the woodlands. This time we ended up wandering for quite some time, and in some way it was as if we were coming back to the same spot again and again and again, and it didn't seem by any natural means. Eventually we had to concentrate on every single step we took to make sure we got out. When you wander in the woods and you keep coming back to the same place again and again and again, even when you're following a straight path on one side of the river, and you ain't crossing a bridge and you come back from the other side of the river, you know there's something wrong. I know how it sounds. I realise this isn't the everyday occurrence for most people. It's not an everyday occurrence for me, but it has happened, and frequently.
Once again, to get out of the forest, we had to use the river crossing. This is me crossing the river on that evening.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Evidence Pending, My Paranormal Life. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It would help me out immensely. I'll see you on the other side. Take care out there.